Advisory Council for Career and Technical Education. Before we start, I'll read through a checklist to ensure through this meeting that we're holding is in compliance with the Right to Know law. As chair of the Advisory Council, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there will be no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to the contemporaneous watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom, and you said YouTube, and via phone by following the direction and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are any problems with access or anyone has a problem. Please email remotesenate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-3043. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member notes their presence, please state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Okay, and I will do roll call. I'll call based on where everyone is on my Zoom screen. Representative Doherty.
Good morning, everybody. Representative Dave Doherty, Merrimack 20, Pembroke and Chichester. I'm at home in Pembroke. I'm alone in the room at the moment. My wife may be in and out in the background. Nice to see everybody.
I guess I should have done as well. I'm Eric Frauworth. I am at home in Manchester, and I am alone in the room with the exception of one of my dogs. Al Smith.
Yes, Al Smith. I'm here in my office in Littleton, just by myself.
David.
I'm here at my home in Amherst, New Hampshire. I'm all alone, and welcome to my home. Thank you.
Thanks. Val.
Val Zanchuk is here representing the BIA. I'm in my office in Jaffrey, all by my lonesome.
Diane. Oh, you're on mute, Diane.
Diane Lewis, I'm at home as well with 3 dogs wandering around.
Thanks. Basso.
Hi, Basso Partinuti. I am in my office in Milford and I'm all alone. I closed the door.
Bruce.
And Bruce Farr, Lakes Region Technology Center. Office by myself, but we're at half capacity with kids back in the building, and damn, it's nice.
Jeff.
Morning all, Jeff Beer, Bureau of Career Development at the New Hampshire Department of Education. I'm at home in Amesbury, Massachusetts, and I'm all by myself.
Amanda.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amanda Trainer joining from RMC Research. I'm at my home in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and alone for the time being, but my husband might wander in.
Thanks. Senator?
Yes, Senator David Waters in Dover and in this room alone. Good morning, everybody.
Peter.
Good morning. Pete McNamara, New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association. I'm in Concord and alone in the house for right now. Thank you.
Thanks. Beth.
Morning, everyone. I'm Beth Doran. I am in my home in New Hampshire by myself.
a couple of animals probably roaming around.
Thanks. Roxy.
I'm Roxy Severance, and I'm in Whitefield, New Hampshire, and I'm new to the group and representing healthcare.
Welcome. Kathy.
Good morning, Kathy Page. I'm with the DOE. I am in Atkinson, New Hampshire, home, and I'm alone.
Thank you. And Karen.
Morning, I'm at John Stark in my office with the door shut and preparing for orientation with freshmen tomorrow morning once we're done here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And I did want to note that, yes, welcome Roxy is our newest official member of the Advisory Council representing healthcare industry. She is our third sort of industry partner. And it was noted last year that we were missing healthcare, which is a major industry in New Hampshire. And so we're very happy to have Roxy with us. And Karen, I have asked to continue joining us. Unfortunately, the legislation that was going to extend our council to add a school counselor to the meeting was part of the omnibus spending bill that was vetoed. And so we are going to work through getting that legislation moved forward again this year. But in the meantime, I felt it was very important that counselors were involved. So I've asked Karen to remain whenever she's available to continue joining us in the meetings, as long as everyone is okay with that. Great. Thank you. And although we are being recorded, which is great for us to have this recording, I will ask again if there is somebody willing to be our note taker.
And also just to add in there, whoever is going to be taking the notes, I can send them the link to the recording afterwards so that you can use that to help better inform the notes that you're taking in case you miss something.
Cool. Thank you.
Eric, this is Pete McNamara. I'd be happy to take notes again if my prior note takings were acceptable.
They were. Thank you, Pete. They were always very thorough. I appreciated it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So we will just start working our way through our agenda. First thing I wanted to talk about was our meeting schedule for the 2021 school year. Historically, we have met the second Monday of every month. And historically, for the entire fall, we have had to move every Monday meeting because the second Monday of every month tends to be a holiday. So I wanted to just put it out there. Do we want to stick with the second Monday and adjust when there's a holiday? Or is somebody interested in proposing different day of the week or different week of the month that might work? And I know we want to respect everybody's individual calendars as well as the legislative calendars that I know our legislative members already have standing meetings. So this, I believe, why we landed on the second Monday. Representative Darty.
Thanks, Eric. I think the second Monday schedule worked pretty well, and I would probably vote to keep it going that way.
Anyone else have any thoughts on it?
This is Pete McNamara. I'm fine with keeping it as is as well.
Okay. With that being said, if there are second Monday holidays, if I publish out a calendar, moving that meeting to the third Monday, is that acceptable to everyone? Just for those instances. Okay. What I will do is after this meeting later today, I will send out a proposed calendar. And that way we can get some eyes on it with the anticipated meetings and make sure I catch all of the Monday holidays. But otherwise we will assume it will be second Monday. And for the time being, we will remain in this format. If as times change, if we're able to meet in person or there is a substantially large room where everyone is comfortable meeting, I am okay transitioning to a face-to-face meeting. But I think we'll play this month to month. And the other sort of bit of update is I wanted to give some information about some DOE staffing changes in our office. Over the summer, we lost 2 of our members, Dean Graziano, a work-based learning coordinator, and Nicole Bellabona, who was one of our ed consultants, have found themselves in other positions. Dean has moved out of the CTE specific arena. He's working, I believe, for a nonprofit right now. Nicole, we have kept in the family. She took a position at Portsmouth High School as the work-based learning coordinator at the local high school. So she is still part of our family and has volunteered to be a guinea pig school for any projects that we would like to do. So we have posted both of those positions, and this Friday we are interviewing candidates for both of those positions. So we are hoping, if all goes well, that next week we're able to make some offers and we can fill those 2 vacancies relatively quickly. And that's it for our end. So in order to keep on our time, I did invite Amanda Trainer from RMC to give us an update on where things stand with the project that they're working on. And we gave her about a half an hour, and that can include her presentation and questions if anyone has. Otherwise, we can hold questions till the end as we see what kind of time we has. So I will turn it over to you, Amanda.
Okay, great. Eric, am I able to share my slides, or do I need you to be able to do that? I'm not sure what the permissions are in this meeting format.
I think you should be able to. It would
Okay.
go at the bottom there.
Yep, I do see that. So let's see if we can go ahead and make that work. Okay. Does everyone see my slide? Equitable access to CTE, SB 190. Okay, great, thank you. So hi, everyone. Most of you I've met in the past, but just quickly, again, my name is Amanda Trainer. I'm here on behalf of RMC Research, which is a consulting group in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and we have been working with Eric's team since January of this year to conduct an evaluation, speaking with many different stakeholders about how we might be able to increase equitable access to CTE, to sort of understand what are the barriers that make it harder for expanded, and what are some possible strategies that either local communities or the state could consider investing in to sort of scale up equitable access. So I want to give you an update on what we've been doing since the last time we met with you. Let me see. There we go. So this is sort of our mini agenda for my 30 minutes. So just tell you a little bit about what's happened since we met last. We have collected most of our data, so I can give you a summary of everything we found, give you an update on the work of our task force, which is another group that we've been meeting with regularly, and then spend time hearing, hopefully from you, discussing any questions you have or whatever recommendations you might have for us, tell you a little bit about what RMC will be doing next, and then I will wrap it up. So the last time we met with you was in June. So we met with SB 90. I gave you all a little bit of an update on what we had done so far. I also that month met with our task force. And just as a reminder, our task force is a sort of a working group, a diverse group of stakeholders. It includes some folks actually who are part of this group as well. We have CT directors, we have superintendents, we have parents, students. And what we did at that time was reviewed the initial findings. So what we had gathered so far from our interviews, surveys, and focus groups with stakeholders. In July, our task force met again. We talked about other states and how they sort of organize their CTE delivery, and talked a little bit about whether or not there's anything that's worth considering in the New Hampshire context. And then we met again in August, and we talked about what would it take to implement some potential strategies, because we heard a lot of ideas from our stakeholders who said, well, what if we could do this? What if we could do that? And so as a task force, we started to map out, you know, if we did want to do thing X or thing Y, what would it take to actually happen? Would it be worth the effort? And should we prioritize it? So just to go back, this is not too different from what you might remember in June, but basically this is a summary of what we heard from our stakeholders. So interviews, focus groups, surveys, and that includes CTE directors, several superintendents, teachers, counselors, students, parents, lots and lots of different folks. And so what you see here is representative and clustered in a sort of most to least. So, you know, things we heard about most frequently to things we heard about less frequently. And we've clustered these things together to sort of give a sense of, you know, some of the barriers we heard about had to do with systems. So scheduling and calendar alignment, we know are challenging. Transportation, course, budget and funding is a bit of a challenge. There are also barriers related to information and understanding. There's a lot of sort of misunderstanding about what modern CTE is, what it looks like. There are some unfortunately persistent stigma. And then there are just some folks who don't know about the CTE that's available to them. Counselors may not fully understand it. Parents may not fully understand it. Students. There are also issues that are sort of related to kind of what we've called academic equity. So that relates to, for example, where CTE courses might be treated differently than academic courses. Weighting came up a lot, where CTE courses, even though they can earn you college credit, are often not weighted in a student's GPA. So there's sort of kind of an institutional stigma almost that seems to be at play. There are also issues with, you know, as some stakeholders said, you know, issues with how some students are able to enroll and some students have to apply for courses. I can, you know, get into more detail, but trying to just sort of cover the summary. And then in terms of access, this came up a lot in terms of there being limited seats in some programs. You know, we know from our CTE directors that some programs are very, very full, whereas others are less full, and the application process for some students can be a barrier as well. The reason why budget and funding is starred there, I just wanted to note, you know, that our task force did not go deep into discussing how to mitigate that barrier. We wanted them to discuss potential strategies aligned to the barriers that would be somewhat implementable at the local level, and state funding or any increase in state funding is not something that an individual CTE director or superintendent necessarily has control over. So we kind of left that aside as a conversation in our August meeting. So strategies. So we talked a lot about, you know, here are some things that we heard that could mitigate these barriers. You know, talking about sort of aligning our calendars better. What if we could do sort of statewide campaign to really rebrand and advertise CTE? What if we could help more middle grade students and parents learn about CTE? What if we could be creative with our enrollment options or where students take their classes? What if we could take a page from our neighbors in Massachusetts and try out something that looks like, well, even here in New Hampshire, like what MST does in Manchester? What if we could try out inclusive CTE in academic high schools? What if we could change some of the policies and practices around how CTE courses are weighted, how credit is accepted, and what application and enrollment looks like? What if we could build out more integrated or academic credit in CTE courses? What if we could think a little bit more about what our statewide and local economic data looks like, so that we make sure that we have big enough programs to accommodate those that are in demand, and maybe not offer as many programs where there's less demand. So the way we organized this for our task force meetings was we said, okay, let's kind of line these up. On the left, you know, here's our clusters of barriers, and here are the strategies that we think would best address those barriers. There's a lot of overlap. You know, if we could somehow solve transportation, it would fix a lot of barriers, but we sort of clustered them in a way that seemed like it would make the most sense. And we broke off into small groups and talked about what would it look like if we were to try to take a crack at implementing some of those strategies. So what we said to our small groups was, for each of these potential strategies, let's think a little bit about the root cause. Why do we have this transportation problem? Why do we have this stigma problem? Why do we have this inequity in course weighting? And then we said, okay, so if we were going to try to fix it, what would be the pros and the cons? What would it actually take? Is this really actionable, and does it impact enough students possibly to sort of be worth the action? And is this something that you would suggest that is a priority? Is it something we should really try to do, or is it something that, well, we'll see if it would work down the road? So that's how we organized our thinking. And so here's the highlights, and I apologize, I know there's a lot of text here. So I'll try to just sort of cover it, and then we can go deeper into some of them if you have detailed questions. So, we talked a lot about calendar alignment, and we know, and as I'm sure many of you know, there are already in the regional agreements, it is an expectation that superintendents do come together on an annual basis with CTE directors and say, let's align our calendars and make them work. And yet it still doesn't seem to quite work as well as we would like it to, because people are pulled in many directions by their local needs. But the group that discussed this felt, this would be really impactful if we could make it better. It really should be something to prioritize. What we should do potentially is reach out to our colleagues at school boards and say, help them understand what the problem is, because they have a role to play. And also reach out to regions or schools where alignment is working pretty well, so we can figure out from them, how is it that you all have made this work better, and maybe think alignment, even if we can't get every single day to match or every schedule to match, are there ways we could at least improve what we do? Another priority or another strategy that the group felt is a really important priority would be sort of a statewide campaign to advertise and rebrand CTE, to sort of think statewide about what could we do to message, what does CTE mean? What does it look like? And the idea here is that it would be statewide, not necessarily owned by the state, by DOE, but that DOE would have an important role along with other stakeholders, so that there could be local implementation pieces, as well as something that happens more broadly. Another strategy that this subgroup felt really strongly about trying out would be to pilot this idea of a full-time academic and CTE inclusive high school. So we talked a lot about how that works in Massachusetts. Of course, we know to some extent that is a bit of a model for students who are enrolled at MST. It would be very impactful for students who can go to that school. It would absolutely have the capacity to make them fully accessible to both their academic and their CTE needs, but it would require a lot of buy-in from many kinds of stakeholders. Their idea is that if you could find a community that would welcome it, and then the State Department of Education, as well as other stakeholders, can provide support to make it work, and then we can share the outcomes. That could be sort of a proving ground to see if that would work for other communities in Massachusetts as well. This set of highlights, these are some more things that we talked about. These ones were seen as maybe a little bit harder to do, or maybe not as impactful, but definitely still considered as potential options. So we thought a little bit about what could we do to scale up opportunities for kids to learn more when they are in 6, 7, and 8. There are a lot of regions and schools that do this quite well. So we thought, what could we do to learn more from them? The application and enrollment process, what this refers to is a discrepancy in the way that some students are able to more easily access CTE courses if they attend a host high school, where they don't necessarily have to apply and commit to the full program, versus students who travel from a partner high school and do need to apply and commit to a program. This group that discussed it wasn't 100% sure what that would look like. Certainly it would be something that regionally would have to be committed to, but they felt that there might be an education role for the department or for other, sort of state leaders to sort of educate stakeholders about why this could be a barrier. We talked about what would it mean if we could provide more academic credit. This could help with student scheduling because it means that if they were getting, for example, embedded math, they wouldn't have to worry about taking an additional math class to meet their graduation requirements. Again, the group that discussed this wasn't 100% sure how impactful and actionable this would be, but agreed that, finding ways to encourage more collaboration between itself and providing for embedded credit where it is deserved by the content standards would be beneficial. We talked about sort of these alternative or flexible enrollment options. So for example, in some of our Vermont CTE centers, students organize their high school pathway such that they take all of their academic classes in the first 3 years. And then they will spend their entire senior year going straight to a CTE center. Some places do it a little bit differently. Some of them do it like for a semester rather than a whole year. But it helps to eliminate some of the scheduling and transportation because it minimizes the back and forth. So this group felt like, yeah, that could work in some places. Transportation might still be an issue, but let's definitely learn more about it because it might really have the chance to impact a lot of students who struggle with the schedule because they have to travel back and forth. Okay, so that was a lot of the stuff that I threw at you, and that's all I wanted to tell you. So what I want to ask now is, when you look again at these strategies, are there any that you all would like to hear more about? That is to say, to hear more about what the discussion looked like from the task force, or that you would like to add your 2 cents, because you might have some ideas for strategies that you think, oh, it would be great if we could try that out. If we have time, Eric, I know we have a limited amount of time.
I don't know if you can see me, Eric, but because you're muted, Eric.
I'm muted, sorry. Senator Waters has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And let me say first, Amanda, what a great job you and the task force have done. I'm just so impressed by the overall work that was done and the kind of comprehension of a lot of different issues and the kind of outline of priorities and actions here. So, just terrific work. And thank you for it.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful project. We're excited.
I suspect on a lot of the recommendations that, I'd be interested in hearing from, obviously the CTE directors have been part of this process, but, I think it'd be good to hear from some of them about, what they think we need to do to get some of those top ones done. And then what do people like me need to do to help with that. So I have a couple of questions, which may be as much to you and as to Eric, and then a more general one. So the first off, I know you weren't trying to put a price tag on some of the things like here, but would it be possible to have a sense of what kind of budget request and whether or not any of this has gone into the DOE budget prep request for CTEs? And then also perhaps to Eric, what role the Educational Funding Commission, how much this might become, or if it is at all part of that. Then
I was just going to say, I think Eric will have to take both those questions.
Yeah,
I can't answer anything
I just
on the
wanted to get them out there for the group. But the more particular one for you, Amanda, is that, and I think I mentioned a little bit about ESL stuff when we had one of our earlier discussions of this, is that I think especially now when people see that word equity, they would be thinking about, race, gender, language, the kinds of things that get discussed about. And, certainly down in Nashville, we had that pilot program about what do we do about ESL in the CTEs. So I think there will be questions about, well, what did you find out about equity issues that are based on gender, say, or race or language?
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good question. I asked this of our stakeholders, and what we found is that in many communities, the major sort of, I would say, special population equity challenge is for our students with disabilities. In CTE can be a challenge if they are, sometimes there are truly physical challenges. If a student in a wheelchair, it's just might not be safe or accessible for them to access certain CTE, or it could be made safe or more equitable, but it's not. It's just hasn't been. For a lot of people, they talked about it in the more abstract, right? They said, well, that would be a problem if for those sort of physical equity issues. In terms of kind of access and equity for our students with disabilities in terms of their learning, one challenge was whether or not they could be fully supported by their paraprofessionals in a one-on-one way if their paraprofessional did not fully understand the CTE content. That was something that came up a bit. For our English learners, yes, in Nashua, in Manchester, in a few other places that I spoke to, those things did come up as issues. In many, many, many New Hampshire communities, it's less of a concern, just because of what their population looks like. So I feel like I'm not really answering your question. I think the sense that I got, from the communities where their population has that need is that it is not as much of an access barrier as some of the systems, such as scheduling, transportation, and the knowledge and awareness. Certainly they were able to think of, on occasion, one or two students where it's like, okay, yeah, that student is learning English and they're also sort of, accessing the CTE content. But overall, it wasn't an overwhelming barrier cited by most of the stakeholders I spoke with. In terms of gender, we know that CTE sort of at large and, Perkins policy at large nationally is, we're always sort of thinking about how do we sort of help more young women get interested in welding and more young men get interested in education or healthcare. And a lot of our CTE directors said, yeah, we see that those patterns play out here too. And, we certainly would welcome ideas and guidance to sort of think about how do we increase those non-traditional representations. But again, the major equity issues that they were worried about was that it's really more about geographic equity, right? Where it's like, if you are lucky enough to go to Portsmouth High School, then it's awesome because the CT center is right there. But if you're unlucky enough to live in neighboring, Greenland or Rye or wherever, then it might be harder for you because your schedule just makes it so tough to get over there.
Well, if I just might make a suggestion, because then I'll go before. I really am concerned that if this goes out as is, that there will be a certain group of people who will look at it and not really want to pay as much attention to it because they don't see any mention of race, gender, language, ability, et cetera. So that, I don't think you have to go back and reinvent the wheel here. I do think that you might consider in several of these fairly obvious categories, it would be pretty easy to say that in this category, particular attention could be paid to those kinds of issues of equity, or, in trying to fulfill this goal, whether it's the branding or the communication or the coordination of schedule. I mean, it just seems to me you could, it would not be very difficult to highlight that rather than some separate equity category about this, to integrate into these ones where appropriate, that, yeah, we think that here's where you could do something about this in a context of addressing this priority. So
I agree.
That's my 2 cents worth. And again, thanks again. Great work.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, that is a good point. And, you know, this kind of goes to what else to wrap up. You know, our work isn't done. We will take all of this plus additional recommendations from our task force to prepare a final report that is much more comprehensive than what I'm sharing today. But your point is very well taken. Those concerns are very important, even if it's not as widely spread or wasn't as widely mentioned, and it will be sort of integrated in the report. Thank you, I appreciate that. Roxy had a question about sort of policies on waiting. Yeah, we had a really interesting discussion about that. And one person who was part of the group with me that talked about that said, I think, counselors could play a really important role in helping understand, or helping other stakeholders understand how and why that's an equity issue. Because if you are a student and you're working very hard in your CTE class and you're taking a really rigorous program, but you also are really interested in keeping your GPA up, maybe you're in your top 10 and then you're really excited about that. Some students then say, well, I'm going to drop this CTE course because it's going to bring down my GPA, even though I really want to take it. And so there's a way in which it kind of reifies stigma about what is the value of a CTE course. The challenge that people saw was, my gosh, there's so much diversity in the way that people organize their grade scales. Like, every district has a slightly different thing. What does an A mean? What does a B mean? There are a lot of entanglements in terms of how weighting is perceived. Obviously, there are some communities that feel that it's not equitable at all, and so they've done away with weighting. So there was a struggle to sort of figure out how to even begin that. That was one thing that people thought, ooh, that might need a legislative change, like to try to get everybody to play fair on course weighting. But I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about that one. Karen is chatting and telling us a little bit about that as well. That's interesting. And this idea of, like a statewide campaign to advertise and rebrand CTE, I think that is something that could be a broad umbrella, right? Because it could be something that you use to talk more about what CTE looks like and to help sort of send different messages and images about who CTE is for and what it looks like and why it's valuable. Any impact of free and reduced lunch on CTE access? That's a great question. When we asked about, what makes it harder for kids to get back and forth to CTE eval, folks didn't really talk too much about socioeconomic status directly. But certainly there are some, if I'm understanding your question right, for students who maybe have the access to their own vehicle, for example, which a wealthier student might, and can then drive him or herself to their CTE center if that's allowed. That's different from a student who doesn't have that access to transportation or doesn't have a parent at home to drive them back and forth. That can have a piece of it. I think that another way that plays in is that there are different perceptions of CTE careers versus sort of more traditional high school to college careers, depending on the socioeconomic status of your family or your community, and whether or not people think this is a good pathway for you or this is not a good pathway for you. So I do think those things, sort of those things do play out, but no one was able to sort of put their fingers on any evidence to say that our poorer students have directly less access to CTE. But it is, I think as Senator Waters says, it's part of the whole umbrella of access and equity when it comes to, are you able to sort of physically get there, or do you have someone telling you this is good for you or this is not good for you? I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's.
Yeah, I just, in the School Funding Commission, of which I'm a member, the reports that we're getting from AIR show a very strong correlation between academic output and outcomes and free and reduced lunch, that the poorer districts have lower outcomes. And I'm just wondering if that correlation also exists for CTE? Is there less access to CTE? Is there perceived? I mean, as you mentioned, that population may be less college inclined, and CTE may be a great opportunity for them to find a career. But if they're being denied CTE, or they're not able to access it, then the CTE outcome sort of follows the academic outcome, and you end up with students coming out of school not only not going to college, but not being prepared for a career. And that's my concern, is that we're just constantly losing a huge portion of our population to the opportunities that CTE could afford them if it's not accessible.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I would love to do more analysis on that. I think that you could design a really interesting study to look more closely. Most of our analysis was qualitative, right? We did a lot of reporting on people's asking, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you hearing? What do you know? We did not take a deep dive into looking at students by sort of their free and reduced lunch status, and then doing any statistical analysis to see to what extent their outcomes, right, their completion or their attainment of an industry recognized credential. I would love to do that. It would be really interesting. But I do think with the data that we have, we could prepare a section of our report that thinks a little bit about that based on that data, or with some additional analysis, because it is a really important question.
Yeah, the AIR draft report is available on the Carsey School website, and there is quite a bit of statistical analysis of the impact of free and reduced lunch, English second language, all those things that Senator Waters was talking about on outcomes.
Yes.
And I just wondering, do these things correlate with a CTE outcome as well?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. I will definitely check it out. I don't, like I said, my work so far hasn't been enough that I could answer that directly, but my guess is that, it's something that we might be able to take a closer look at. I could say, well, no, that's it. I'll stop. I don't have the answer to that, but I think it's very important, and it's something that we can definitely look at.
All right. Well, thanks, Amanda. In the last minute, I think I want to answer a couple of the questions, or at least put it out there that I can. With regard to the funding question Senator Waters asked, we did not, in none of the conversations did we, and it was an intentional, we did not address the cost piece of it. When we, and as Amanda mentioned, when we talked to the task force about their ideas, was to really look at things that they could do at a local or a regional level, because we did not want them to say, here was this great idea, but we can't do it because there's no money from the state to do it. We wanted to look from the more positive side of what's something you could do at a local level that you think at a local level you have impact and you could do. If it works as a pilot, then yes, now we can look from a statewide level, what kind of funding would we need to impact this statewide? But we didn't want them to lean back on the, well, we can't do it because there's no funding. That being said, as the funding commission is looking, the Addison Commission is looking, I already did present at them that we did discuss transportation, and it comes up again, this comes up everywhere, is a huge fiscal burden. That the schools are being reimbursed 10 cents per mile per student, regardless of how much the transportation costs. And COVID-19, although it may not have caused any specific educational problems, has exposed some major pieces, like if they have to double the number of buses so the students can be socially distant, we're not giving them twice as much money. We're still giving them 10 cents per mile per kid. So we have school districts who are saying, we can't afford to send more buses. Kids have to get themselves there. If a kid doesn't have their own car, Val, they can't get there. Or a school is going hybrid. So 2 days a week, the kid is at their sending high school, gets on a bus and goes to CTE. But the other 2 days a week, they're at home, but CTE is still open. They can't get there because there's no bus. So it sort of exacerbated some of these inequity issues that sort of compounded what Amanda's and her team is working on. The weighted class thing I think was really interesting because if I remember correctly, Amanda, a student actually brought this up in one of the sessions.
Yes.
Said, I'm in CTE and I'm in a dual enrolled course where I'm getting college credit. And my friend is in an AP class who has a higher weighted course, but if he doesn't take the AP exam, he doesn't get college credit. Why is my course weighted less than my friends if I'm already getting the college credit? So that was where, and a student brought that up. It was really profound. But the task force felt that at least currently it probably impacts such a small percentage of students that they didn't feel it was broad enough to make the top 10 list, but something that definitely should be looked at because there may be a handful of students who say, I have to drop my CTE class because it's lowering my GPA, my weighted GPA, and I'm going to miss a scholarship.
Right, right.
So it wanted to be addressed.
Eric, if I could just jump in real quickly, that may, without looking at your data, that may affect more significant students than we might first look at.
It probably does. Because, and again, the question we didn't ask that I asked Amanda, one of the things we'd like to do this fall before the report is done is to get a panel of 11th and 12th graders who chose not to attend CTE and find out why. Because that might expose a lot of these students of either I didn't know about it or it was going to drop my GPA. So we wanted to find out why they didn't attend CTE because we talked to the kids who attend. We never talked to the kids who didn't.
Yeah, Eric, that's another issue with the pre-engineering, which is tied in with CTE, but a lot of kids wanted to do pre-engineering, but were sort of forced with the dilemma of picking that or AP physics or something like that. And they would rather have the engineering course, and the colleges would rather have them take the engineering course than AP physics, which is basically worthless to most engineering programs. So you've got colleges wanting kids to take AP or take pre-engineering to get them prepared for engineering school. And their teachers and schools and parents are pushing them to take AP physics. And yet the end result is something that the colleges don't really care about. So again, it ties into not only CTE, but also the whole pre-engineering program.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. Something Eric and I have talked about a few times so far is bringing in some admissions people. There may be some misconceptions that would be really helpful to clarify for not only this body, but for the general public. If we talk to some admissions people at some of our competitive schools, including New Hampshire state colleges and universities, we may find that holistic admissions are becoming more and more the norm. And I think we're still operating under this assumption or conventional wisdom, if you will, that there are things that are important to admissions that maybe aren't as important as we think they are. And so I think that actually talking to some admission folks would give us some really solid information.
Yeah, and I think too, especially with engineering, if you talk to the engineering faculty as opposed to admissions, you'll find that there is a discrepancy in what they're looking for. Engineering is looking for something that generic admissions isn't.
Correct.
And they have that argument internally about what the proper preparedness is for engineering versus general admissions. So if you talk to the engineering dean at UNH, you may get a different perception than if you talk to the head of admissions.
Okay, that's thank you.
Very true.
So, I know we could probably go on for another hour, but I want to make sure that I
Eric, I won't go on for an hour, but I want to add something, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
There are several things in this report that you are requesting, such as publicity campaign. You're talking about transportation. You have that pilot CTE high school. You have the regional pieces there. And if you don't have that in your budget prep and your requests coming out of the DOE, it will be very hard for us in the legislature to get some of those things in. So I don't know if the horses are out of the barn at DOE on the budget request. And I know you're under pressure to, submit a lower budget because the governor's instructions, but I mean, transportation in particular, we've always been trying to increase that. But many of these things here, if there isn't some kind of placeholder that DOE is willing to put on them, it's going to be 2 years before anything can happen on the ones that will require some funding. And these are really valid action items that are put forward here. But it's again, I say, we're going to do pretty well in education in the budget. I really do believe that. But if we're going to make that argument to get some of these CTE things in there, it's much harder if there's been no mention of it in the budget from coming out of the DOE.
Okay, I will talk to the commissioner and just see where his thoughts lie on how much we have wiggle room in our submission. All right, well, thank you.
Yay. Yeah, thank you for making some time for me as well. Like I said, our work isn't completely done. We do still, the timing has been difficult, but we do still want to talk to some more students. We are still hoping to talk to some more superintendents as well, because we'd like to get a little bit more of their perspective. We're also going to try to pay attention. This wasn't really the original intent of our project, but we are also going to listen if we hear any interesting stories about how people are finding success in remote or hybrid strategies that might have some bearing on or have some long-term value. So in November, we're going to bring our task force back together to take a look at the draft report, give us any feedback, and then in December we'll have sort of a final version to share with everybody. And that's all. So yeah, but anybody, if you guys have more questions, you want to talk to me, you want to get more detail, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with anybody anytime, or talk to Eric and he'll find out for you.
Well, thank you. All right, turning it over to Beth, who has got a report for some information for us about apprenticeships.
Hi, everyone. I don't remember when we met the last time or what we talked about, but I think I know you all know that we did apply for a apprenticeship grant to focus specifically with high school students in a pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship model. What I don't know, if you know, is that we did actually receive that grant. It's a $1.4 million grant that will go through June of 2023. That is focused on, as I mentioned, developing pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship programs. And we'll be working with 21 high schools throughout the state, or up to 21 high schools throughout the state. I think the important thing to note is that this grant will cover things like transportation that everybody's talking about for students to participate in work-based learning activities. It can cover tuition costs for students that might be involved in an apprenticeship that the STEM scholarship may run out for students, since they can only take so many of those courses per year through the scholarship. It will also provide some funding to businesses in order to pay some wages for some work-based learning opportunities as well. It also allows us to hire 3 grant people under the grant. I have hired all 3. I can tell you that Ann Banks, who was our current Work Ready New Hampshire statewide liaison and also worked on the apprenticeship, it was a 50-50 split between those 2 grants, has taken the grant manager position. And we have just hired, yes, we've finally hired 2 people in addition to Ann, outreach specialists. I can't tell you those names yet because I don't know if their supervisors have been notified, but one person that will be an apprentice and a business outreach specialist who will work from Wits High School's Concord North, and then another person who will do the same with High School's Concord South. I have a list of about 30 high schools that include CTE centers that have said they are interested in learning more about this project. So probably, if not this week, definitely next, Ann Banks will start reaching out to all of those high schools that have expressed an interest to try to set up some times and basically get this project going. So we're very, very, very excited about it. It's a piece that we've been trying to implement since we've started our apprenticeship programs, and just have not had the resources and amount of time that needs to be committed to develop something like this. So We're fully funded, it's a well-funded project. One of the first things we'll be working on is a marketing campaign to bring to specifically mostly parents and students, and also obviously high school partners as well, to help them understand the value of an apprenticeship and what it would look like with a student in high school. So that'll be one of the first things that we will work on, along with talking with the various high schools to get them on board. So again, we're very excited about it. Stay tuned. You'll be hearing a lot more about it, and we'll get going as soon as possible. It's obviously going to be quite a challenge in COVID times. We're concerned about that. You know, businesses have been, starting to come back to the table. As you know, we do have 3 now other apprenticeship grants that focus on high schools. And those pretty much came to a screeching halt in March. We've done nothing with apprenticeship as far as enrolling students in apprenticeships probably since March, but businesses started to come back to the table, I would say probably July, early August. And we have started up a few new apprenticeships in advanced manufacturing and also healthcare within the last month or so. So things are starting to look up, but these are very difficult times to be bringing these kinds of new projects and initiatives into play. So the DOL is aware of that, obviously. That's one of the reasons why we almost didn't even apply, because if you remember, the application, I believe, was due in late May, I believe. And it was a time, like, it couldn't have come out at a worse time, the RFP, but we decided to go for it, and hopefully things will begin to improve, and the DOL will be cognizant that we probably may not be able to move as quickly as we'd like. But that's it in a nutshell. So stay tuned. We will be in touch.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for Beth about apprenticeships?
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. We're very excited about this.
Okay. Well, thank you. Information from the schools. And only because of where everybody lives in the grid, I'm going to go with Al first, because you're up at on the top of my family grid here.
Well, we've been back at school directly after Labor Day, so this is our second week. And in Littleton, we're in a hybrid just to, take our population and decrease that 50%. So students are here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 cohorts, like a lot of you are doing. The challenging piece has been every single one of our sending schools is on a different schedule. So some students are here 2 days a week, remote 2 other days. Some students from another school may be here 4 days a week. So it's extremely challenging for our teachers to plan and to have their programs move at a pace they're most accustomed to. So that's been a huge challenge. Apart from everyone wearing masks and staying socially distant, I will, as Bruce earlier said, there was a lot of excitement coming back to school this year. It was really great to see students again. Students, my perception, they're really happy to be here. It's certainly 6 months was a long time. Just trying to get some kind of normalcy. It's a challenge, but everyone's upbeat and looking forward to hopefully a really positive year. And as Beth has said, hopefully some doors start to open. I also am very involved with our students and internships, and it's been a challenge this fall to try and place students out in normal settings that they would be very welcome. People are just being safe, but hopefully we do what we can so we remain in school, whatever we can do.
Okay, thanks. Vaso, what's happening in Milford?
Hi, we are also back on a hybrid schedule. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, A days and B days. So we see a kid on Monday and then on Thursday, or on Tuesday and Friday. It is more confusing than it sounds, to be honest with you. But we had a lot of trouble balancing classes, like in our construction class. On the A day, we had like 12, and on the B day, we had 2. And no matter how hard we tried to move kids, there were other constraints that did not allow us to do that. So some of the classes are really uneven. How can you teach, with 10 kids on A day and 2 kids on B day? So that's going to be very challenging for our teachers, I think, kind of trying to cover 1 year's worth of material in 2 days in class. So what we are trying at the Applied Technology Center is the flipped classroom model. And it's very early days right now, but that's kind of the direction that I feel we should be heading, where the kids are doing book work and stuff at home, and then they are totally hands-on in here. Scheduling with other districts has been very difficult in Region 16. Also, I have been in the job for a year, and I am the oldest standing administrator in Region 16. I smile when I say that. I cried the first week. So it has its own challenges, The other thing is that because each school is in a different schedule, now the schedule just don't work at all. So we lost quite a few of our out-of-district students. We also last year had 2 classes for the manufacturing exploration and externship, which is the kids that go out to local companies. And we only have 1 class with 9 in the spring, and I'm hoping that it will work out. We also had last year 2 career-focused internship classes that were packed. They were like 24 in each one. And this year we have like 15. The kids don't sign up if there is no hands-on part. They don't sign up to do an externship when they don't feel safe or they know it's not going to happen. So in those terms, it's been kind of rough, I'll say that. And the biggest challenge that our district, we have as a district right now is the integration of Canvas. It was decided late, and I am the Canvas person for the district. So I have not done much CTE stuff recently. Well, not between 7 and 3. Like my CTE day starts at 3 p.m. And so it's been very challenging for all of us, I think. So that's it.
So thank you. So on that, we learned on Thursday who the new CTE director is in Nashua.
I met her, yeah.
We learned on Thursday. So they did name a CTE director. Mike, for people who didn't know, Mike left. It was sort of a last minute job change over the summer. He was going to stay on to help with Perkins, but they had no director, but they did hire internally. It was one of the CTE teachers, one of the business teachers in Nashua has been named director, and she's being assisted by another teacher who had been serving as interim assistant principal for the spring semester. So she does have somebody with some administrative history in the building to help her. But yes, they are absolutely brand new. And then in Hudson, we also lost our director there at the last minute over the summer. And Steve Beals, who was the principal of the high school, has been named interim director of the CTE Center for the year to help finish the construction. But again, he does not come from the CTE world. So yes, Vaso, you're in charge.
Yeah, they gave me the Region 16 website. I'm like, wow, bring it in, yeah.
And Nashua has, the transportation challenge in Nashua is they are currently fully remote. And as such, the building is only opening at 9 a.m. for people who are working in the building. So students coming from sending school districts that start at 7:30 have no place to go for 90 minutes because the building doesn't open until 9, right? Bruce is shaking his head. You can see where this is going.
Even worse for
yeah.
our students going to Nashua because they call A block the 9 o'clock, but
Right.
A block it's at 7:30. Our kids were scheduled to be here at 9 o'clock to take other classes.
So we did get that email this morning, and I copied the commissioner on it, but we do have our internal lawyers with the Attorney General's office trying to craft some appropriate language that is not too browbeating to send down to the districts to let them know that this violates all sorts of policy and agreements that they can't do that. So we're working on fixing that, but unfortunately, we're not going to know what these challenges are until they start happening as schools start opening. So Bruce, where are you as the first day of challenges or positives are already happening? Let's start with positives.
Well, first of all, I want to recognize and appreciate the smile that's on Al and Val's face. This is very close to my 50th year in education. And I'll tell you, never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that I would be doing the types of things that we're doing right now. It is incredible. And to have any smile at all is interesting. I would say that occasionally in education, we're accused of being unable to be individualized needs of kids. And I would say that that's not the case right now. We are hybrid up here, much like Val, 2 days for the core number of kids. We have kids coming from sending schools, anywhere from 4 days to fully remote. I have my second level kids coming in 4 days a week, not 2 days and 2 days. Transportation provided 2 of those days, 2 of them are not. And some more support by all the school boards on that. We've got kids coming in from home schools now, very actively coming in only to us and then going back. And then we've got kids that are 100% virtual at the high schools, but are also coming in just for CTE. So huge smorgasbord of individualization depending upon what meets the needs of the kids that we have in front of us. That is something to be pleased with. And I will just share one story. Is I had a mom on the phone last week, and I called her and said, we'd like to have your student come in 4 days a week instead of 2, but you signed up for virtual 100%. What does that mean to you? And she basically said, Bruce, you need to understand, I want my kid in 2 days a week. I can't support 4, but I'm going virtual the rest of the time because we have significant health issues in our household. And we are just scared that my student is going to bring something back home. But that CTE experience is so important to my kid's life that we're willing to take the risk for 2 days a week. And I hope you can help us make it work. What a testimony to what the support we have out there for parents, that they see us in that room, knowing that this virus could have a terrible consequence if they figure it wrong. So I hung that phone up. I didn't smile, Al, but I did say there is a reason we're still fighting this battle, and that's for these kids. Deeply touched. My job, it's like an administrator's job right now, is to recognize that the teachers have an impossible job. And whatever we can get off their shoulders, whatever can be put back on the back burner has to be done. Because just as Al alluded, to trying to figure out what kids in front of you which day and how do we keep this curriculum and competency base forward, that's their priority. And whatever I can get off their plate, it's just going to go on the back burner. And that's a moment by moment call. But we're open, pretty happy right now, but nervous.
Thanks, Bruce. And I think, yeah, you hit it pretty well that we do have in several instances, like with Nashua and in Manchester, where the school district opted to be fully remote, a nice dialogue between the CTE director, the principals, and the superintendents have granted CTE a little bit of leeway, about the same that the school districts are granting to ELL and special ed, to allow for small groups to come in. So in Nashua, I believe they were given 25% capability. That they, whatever, if the class normally had 20 kids in it, each day they could have 5 kids. They gave them the 25%. So, and I know at MST, it is strictly the CTE portion of the day. So even the kids that are full day MST students are only in the building at MST for their CTE portion, and for their non-CTE portion, they have to be remote. So, so Karen was able to get that piece out for CTE. So yeah, it's very different everywhere. And I think, Bruce, you sort of encapsulated what everybody is going through with the 14 different types of student coming in from the different arrangements. So, and we know it's changing on a daily basis. We're getting calls and emails daily, almost daily, about busing challenges. We have school districts that are no longer, they don't have the high school in their town, and so they contract with another town for their high school. And because state law does not mandate that you provide busing for high school students, have cut their budget and are no longer providing busing. So Winchester is no longer providing busing to get their high school students to Keene. So for the high school students, they were told, if you don't have your own transportation, then you just need to sign up for Keene's remote education. Well, that's all well and good unless you're a construction student who needs to get to Keene. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do to help accommodate, because the agreement and the legislation says that sending districts must pay for transportation to get a kid to CTE. But because they're not providing it now to get them there for a traditional student, how is it Uber? How do they get the kid there? So we did have a couple of kids who said, we don't have our own cars. How do we get there? So that's another one that is in the hands of the Attorney General to figure out how to interpret the legislation. Beth, can you talk a little bit about what's going on with the community colleges in this same sort of strange world? Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. So yes, I mean, pretty much just as everybody else is doing, we're, as I had mentioned a couple meetings ago, we're in a hybrid format. For the most part, all of our gen ed courses, such as English, history, math, things of that sort, are all being held online, and trying to get as many CTE hands-on based classes on campus. Still, campuses are, very limited amount of students are there. We have all of the precautions that everybody else needs to be taking. But so far, things have gone well. Students are happy to be back on campus, and classes seem to be running without issue. So hopefully it'll stay that way, and we'll take it one day at a time. I would like to mention Running Start and what our plans are for Running Start. This is hot off the press and to be announced today. So we're extremely excited about this. A little concerned and ambivalent about it too, but all at the same time, it's a great step forward for us. So we understand that obviously you're all in some sort of hybrid or remote learning situation. So we've been trying to put forth a online registration system for Running Start since the pandemic began. Back in March, we've been talking about this, and this is something that we've been wanting to do for the last 5 years, but just have not been able to swing the cost of it because we wouldn't want to pass that along to the students. But what we've been able to do now with, luckily with the CARES and Gopher funding, because it's my opinion that without some sort of online registration form, our Running Start numbers would be severely impacted. And I think they're going to be severely impacted anyway, but without some sort of online form, it would not be good. So we're going to be using some, I don't know if it's CARES or Gopher funds, to be able to fund at least this first year of an online registration system. And we're using a vendor called Dual Enroll, which is very exciting. It's specifically built for dual and concurrent enrollment registration systems. It's what they do. We looked at a variety of different registration platforms, and Running Start is so complicated. If you know it, the high schools understand it when you're talking about scholarships, and we have STEM scholarships, we have Chancellor's Office scholarships, there's just a lot of different moving parts when you're registering somebody for Running Start. So we decided to go with the company called Dual Enroll because they have it. Again, it's what they do. So we're working with them right now. We contracted with them as of Friday. And, basically because we had to get through all of the internal stuff, as far as were we going to try to do it ourselves? And, it took us longer than I wanted it to, but the bottom line is we do have dual enroll fully on board. They're working as fast as they can right now and tell us that they should have a first prototype for us by the end of September. So we will be extending the Running Start registration deadline through the end of October, which will give high schools plenty of time and us plenty of time to talk with students in a variety of different formats. As I mentioned, we'll be sending out an email today, but that email will, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned this to all of you before, but that email will outline 3 different options that high schools can take in order to register Running Start students. The first would be business as usual, which we know will be highly unlikely, would be the Running Start coordinators going into the high schools and providing the information. So we know that's probably off the table, but wanted to put that option out there in case there was any school that was interested in allowing our Running Start coordinators to come in. The second option will be to, the Running Start coordinators will schedule, just as they would going into the high school, they'll schedule Zoom meetings or Google Hangout or Google, whatever you guys use, to meet with students in a group, whatever works best for you. We'll schedule those meetings and present as we normally would, standing in front of a class. And that could be individually presenting to classes as we do, or presenting to groups of students if that's possible. Totally your call, and you decide what you want to do and let your Running Start coordinator know. The last option, and this is mostly for schools that are fully remote, is a YouTube video. High schools will send high school teachers a YouTube video of what needs to happen in order to register for Running Start. So all those options will be out there. Hopefully the Running Start form and system will be available the beginning of October, and we will extend the deadline through the end of October. The wonderful thing about dualenroll.com is that it not only allows for an online registration system and payment system, which is what we're implementing this fall, but it also allows for communicate. It's a whole package. It allows for us to certify high school teachers online. It allows for teachers and faculty to share syllabi. It allows for, this registration form to start with a student and then be passed on to a parent to sign, and then go back to the guidance counselor or whoever it is that's going to, or the teacher who's going to be approving it as well. So it's an awesome system. We're very, very excited about it. We're grateful that we're able to do it now in these times to help us out with getting it started, and then we'll build it into our budget for years to come. So again, those of you that are in high schools, stay tuned. Once again, you'll be seeing some information come out from the Running Start coordinators that outlines all of this. But you're the first to hear about it. So spread it around if you want. Tell anybody that, I'll actually be sending out something to all the CTE directors probably today as well, just to make sure you guys have it. And in that sense, ask you to share with your principals and superintendents. Again, the Running Start coordinators will be doing all this, but you can't hear it too many times. So we'll be getting that out to you today tomorrow morning at the latest. Yeah, we're very excited about it. This is a long time coming. It's been something we've been looking at. I have notes from dual enroll back to 2010. So they've been doing it a long time, and it's something we've wanted to do for a long time, and it took a pandemic to help us do it. So that's the good news.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. And I will ask Karen if from your side of the office, anything that you've seen, changes. Is there something that we can get out to the schools from the CTE centers to let the students from the school side know that CTE is still running? I think that may be a big question. So anything you can share.
In our world, they've been doing an amazing job communicating. So it's just that honestly, everything has kind of been individualized. So it's almost like every kid needs a plan. So our ones who have elementary schools at home have called in and said, this is what it looks like in our life here. Can you help me find a way? And the administrators here, touching base with the CET directors there, have made it work. Honestly, we're just having students in the building for the first time tomorrow. And our kids were given the opportunity to either attend CTE or their orientations here. So everybody's been super flexible to this point. I think trying to just get the kids and the families comfortable that once we hit the ground running, then we can impose sort of a more solid structure. But I think from the school counselor lens, understanding at this point that our students and our families are humans before they're students, and getting everybody comfy will allow us to have them work as students, you know, a little bit, maybe in a week or two will be like more head time, but right now we're dealing with the heart.
That's good. No, thank you. And I said that conduit is what we are really hoping for, is to make sure we keep this dialogue with the counselors open, because it's been missed in the past years that we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of everybody from all sides. So thank you. Anybody else have any questions for any of the school side people as we're moving into this? Val?
Yeah, just to talk a little bit about internships. I've been talking to Conval about getting an intern in here, and suggested that we look at a long block, you know, like 5 or 6 hours, so the kid can really get involved with what we're doing here, as opposed to a, you know, hour and a half, which is more like a job shadow. And I think with the flexibility that the current situation is allowing, you know, a 6-hour block is not that hard to do if the kid's, you know, doing a lot of his study work at home at his own pace in their own time. So I think there's a real opportunity for meaningful internships where the kid can spend the better part of a day, you know, once a week at the company, and really get into the job and still do his schoolwork at his or her own pace when they can squeeze it in.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, Wednesdays in many instances tends to be the remote day.
Right.
Again, this is going to be an individualized thing, because there are school districts that on remote days are doing it synchronous, which means if you normally have English at 7:30 in the morning, you need to be online from 7:30 until 8:45 to be. So that, again, may be an individual student opportunity of saying, hey, this kid is going to miss classes for these days because they're doing this. So I worry about the synchronous ones, not just from they miss out these type of opportunities, but also, you know, I have a neighbor who has 3 kids in school. Now, they all have laptops issued by the school. I don't think the bandwidth is going to be able to maintain all of these kids. We were talking about this with the commissioner. We were on a Zoom call at the Department of Ed, and the commissioner kept freezing up. And there were 4 of us on the call, and we were all in the Department of Ed server. So we said, we don't know what's going to happen. Comcast is going to crash when all of these students start trying to be online in Zoom or Canvas or Google Classroom, wherever they're on at the same time. So stay tuned for that one.
Certainly asynchronous would be so much better,
yes,
and would really open up the possibility for a true competency-based learning experience where the kids can learn at the time they have available, and that way they can squeeze an internship in, you know, at the convenience of the student and the company, which is
and that is, it is going to be again an individualized one. You wouldn't necessarily be able to say, okay, great, we're going to just take, you know, anybody from you know, Milford CTE Center. That's great, but their home school may have a different opinion for what Wednesday looks like. So, but I appreciate it. I think you're right, Val, that, you know, a full day makes a lot more sense than a 2-hour shadow in the afternoon. But also could open up the opportunity that if the kids are doing CTE in the morning, but their school is remote, they could come to you at noon and at least be there from noon to 5, all, you know, because their school is remote for the rest of the day. So yes, I agree. That comes down to parents, school, and business agreeing that they're okay with the students working in the community under current circumstances. Karen.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I wanted to add, I think it's just important for us to look at the whole community, that we are bridging this gap. So what we're hearing from our kids right now is, thank heavens we are having synchronous experiences so that they can begin to feel the community in the classroom, and that their teacher is there, and there's that sense after 6 months of being seen and having an automatic response. I will share that I don't think that us taking care of kids in this way would get in the way of any kind of an opportunity, because what we're trying to do now, I mean, there's these beautiful things that are happening, right, as a result of COVID. So we're learning now to stream some of our classes and working with the teachers to have their own sort of willingness to be recorded. And so if a kiddo was to then leave and go have an apprenticeship for a full day and have the opportunity to do that, we can still have the kids in class, and then the other kiddo can go back in and press record when they do have that time. I just think it's important while we face this brave new world that we don't want to forget the importance of the human connection and how much the classroom is important to some of our kiddos, especially from some of the homes they're at. So just a little plug.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. And I said, yeah, we're all daily changing what we do. There is no question about that. Sort of with that transportation piece, something for future conversation at this group. And as we start sort of building out what our fall topics are going to be, a question has come up from students who are attending charter schools that they have access to CTE. It is not a problem. The question is, how do the kids get from the charter school to the CTE center? And it is not delineated anywhere in the rules or the legislation. It is because the rules were all written before charter schools really had a foothold in New Hampshire. And they all say that it is the responsibility of the sending district to pay for transportation. But that's under the assumption that the kid is at the sending high school. So the question is, a kid is at a charter school and then goes to a CTE center, who's supposed to be responsible for covering that cost of transportation? So there's tons of answers to that question, but it's something that the next topic that was on the agenda that was I wanted to mention a topic that I'd like to bring up for the October meeting is the rules in the Board of Ed rules for CTE. 2 years ago, basically they were gutted. And there is very little left in the rules from the state level regarding CTE. It is predominantly around renovation and construction, but a lot of the rest of the rules are gone. So one of the conversations that we would like to have is, and I will send out to everybody in the next week or so, what the rules used to be, and then what the current rules are. And then the question will be, are there any rules that got removed that we would like maybe to propose putting back in again? Are there other missing rules like charter schools that were totally, and homeschool students, totally out of missing that need to be in? We get a lot of questions around homeschool students and their ability to access CTE. It's just missing from the rules. So we'd like to start putting some ideas in of, now that you know, especially from the directors who are feet on the ground in the schools, of questions you get from the parents of charter school kids, homeschool kids, where they go. We have a Vermont student attending a New Hampshire charter school and is now attending a New Hampshire CTE. Who pays the tuition? Typically, it's the sending school. Well, the sending school is in Vermont. And so these are the kind of things that hadn't come up in the past. So, this is what this group is for, is to find these kind of things and now start putting together some ideas for what we would like for rules to potentially put back in. And the other one I know is near and dear to Senator Waters' heart, because he asks me about it on a fairly regular basis, is the construction rules. And what are we going to do when we finish this current cycle of construction for our CTE centers? And how can we reimagine how we do construction for space in CTE centers, rather than each center waiting 25 years before they come up with the cycle again to rebuild? Is there an opportunity to look at it differently for smaller grants to renovate spaces? And I know Roxy will appreciate this. Many of our schools would like to add health science programs. It's an expensive renovation. And if they're just going to wait 25 years, it doesn't make any sense. So are there creative ways that we can do some renovation funds that schools can just add, renovate space to turn into different classrooms? I know Vaso wants to do it.
Yes.
If she wasn't up for renovation right now, she'd have to figure out a way to renovate her graphic design studio to turn it into a health science lab. She's incorporated into her construction. but not everybody can. So
I really appreciate you mentioning this because our center is now 20 years old. It's not exactly falling apart, but the way the spaces were configured in 1995, when we weren't really using computers, is making some of these spaces that we have make no sense, whereas other spaces are now fully computerized. So I don't know, like, for us, we are up for innovation in 5 years. So we already started the process locally to start looking into funding and things like that. But at the same time, I don't want to wait for 5 years to get a health science program. I want one next year. So trying to figure out all these pieces and where, like, finding a space the size of a health science program. It's very interesting right now.
And I tell you, Fall Mountain is now officially, it's an independent center. It is no longer a satellite of Keene. It's an independent center. They're not on the renovation list anywhere. And they also would like to add a health science program. So they're not even, we can't even say, okay, in 5 years you can do it. They don't exist on the schedule. And if they did, they would be at the bottom of the list. So they'd have to wait for everybody to go through the entire cycle. So they'd be up in about 30 years. And so we know that's not viable. So we have some creative ideas, especially for health science. Jeff and myself and maybe a couple others from the team are going up to Dartmouth Hitchcock on Thursday. Mike from Keene is now the externship coordinator at Dartmouth Hitchcock. So that, again, we didn't lose somebody. We put them into a new position. And we're going to talk about how we can partner with the health industry around programs like this. Rather, Vaso, if you can't right away, if you can't build a lab space, if you can offer the didactic in your building and then utilize the health training space that the local hospital has, that could be an opportunity.
No hospital.
We've also talked about the opportunity through a grant maybe to buy another RV and turn it into a mobile hospital, put 3 beds in, and then multiple schools can book time in it and use that for their labs. So we're trying to find some creative solutions without, a $15 million high school renovation of how we can expand CTE through the renovation dollars. So we need to spend some time talking about some renovation ideas so we can spend that money in October.
Eric, I am who I am. Keep the plug there. I'm ready to double my advanced manufacturing program in square footage if I had an option to do that. So Al, nod your head, health and advanced manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
And that is, as Jeff is very happy to hear, that comes from the local needs assessment of what's needed, where's the need, where's the local businesses, let's match the programs to it. Well, now we need to be flexible enough to change some of our space in our buildings to meet those needs. And how do we do that? And yes, health, manufacturing, we're starting to add aviation. What does that look like? They need space inside the building to fly drones. So, we do need to start looking at a quicker way to do some renovation money that doesn't involve, Vaso planning this 5 years out. Again, by the time you do the shovel in the dirt, the economy is going to be completely different and the jobs might be different. So what you planned now may not make sense for when you get a new building in 5 years. So that's where that is. And there are some models out there. Other things, I didn't know if Val wants to talk anything about the adequacy commission and what's happening with that. And I know you've got a meeting later today.
Yeah, well, actually,
right now.
Yeah, Rick Glad's at a meeting right now. So, we did get the report from our consulting group AIR, looking at other ways of looking at the outcomes of education in the state, and they've created a dynamic model that you can play with to see, as you up and down the state contribution, you can see the impact on every school district in the state. So we're starting to get our hands around that concept of an outcome-based funding model as opposed to an input-based model, much like we have now, as being, you know, a representation of what's actually happening, as opposed to, you know, some thought about, well, if we put these inputs in, we're going to get these outcomes. Now we're looking at the outcomes and going backwards in a regression model and saying, okay, what do we need to be looking at in terms of funding across the state to provide equity in opportunity. So that's all part of our discussion. We have not yet defined the adequacy part of it. We know what the total amount of the spend is, and the assumption of the model is, if you look at New Hampshire, we're one of the highest per capita spending states in the country in terms of, you know, spending per student, and we have one of the highest outcomes. So if we say in general across the board, we're spending enough money and we're getting good results, but if you look internally to the state, there's huge disparities between, you know, the really high value districts with lots of real estate valuation and the low value district. So from the state's perspective, in terms of a workforce, if we could get that output evened out a little better, then we would see hopefully a better outcome overall for the state. So that dynamic is in the model. The model is available on the Carsey School website. There are our partners in doing the school funding program, so you can actually pull that model up and play with it if you want to see, you know, how varying state contributions affect local districts. But what isn't in there yet is, okay, what aspect of that is defined as adequacy? You know, what percentage of that cost? Right now, you know, the adequacy funding is very low. Everyone's arguing it's way below what was reasonable. The Conval lawsuit, you know, specifies adequacy around $9,000, which is over double what the state's providing right now. They've redefined the current formula to include different assumptions, you know, student to teacher ratio, things of that nature. The model that we're working with right now from AIR is based on, here are the outcomes, and how do we go back and find out, you know, what the funding per district should be in total, and now we're trying to redefine, you know, what portion of that is the adequacy. And also included in that adequacy or that cost formula is should the state provide for transportation or not provide for transportation? And you can actually just toggle that on and off and see what the impact is on a statewide property tax, for example, if transportation is included or if it's excluded. The other thing that's not in there yet is something specific like CTE, and Representative Ladd keeps hammering this point, is where in this generalized formula do we account for CTE and the costs associated with it? It's not in the formula specifically, it's in the generic outcome of the regression analysis, but that will still be part of the discussion as we work towards, you know, focusing a recommendation for the legislature, which is due at the end of the year.
Okay, great, thank you. Beth reminded me we have the Career Academy, which started, I guess, this week. You wanted to give a quick update on where that stands.
Yes, sure. Actually, it started a couple weeks ago. Our classes started the week before Labor Day. We originally had, well, there were a number of students that had originally applied, but we were down to 13 when school had started the week before Labor Day. But 2 students unfortunately chose to withdraw the first day because they really, I mean, they were looking forward to going to college physically on campus, and they felt that it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to do that. So they went back to their original high school. So we now have 11 students who are participating in the New Hampshire Career Academy, and I'm pleased to say that all 11 students seem to be doing very, very well. We've even been told that a few of them are the stars of the program. So it looks as if it's off to a great start. I mean, we'll see how, you know, the students progress, and hopefully things will go well, but they all have their books, and which was, you know, clunky. It was a little clunky just because you're talking college versus high school, and, you know, we're paying for the courses are free, but we're also need to working with industry sponsors to pay for the books and fees that the students are need to use throughout the semester, because the tuition covered the funds that are coming from the charter school only covers the tuition. So Commissioner Edelblu and Chancellor Hewitt are working on getting some industry sponsors on board to ensure we can cover those books and fees. But again, you know, it's very difficult in these times. So what won't be covered by, if they're not able to get business sponsors on board as quickly as we need to, which would be now, then we do have some funds in our CCSNH charitable scholarships that we'll be using in order to cover those books and fees. So we'll let you keep you posted on how they're doing, but based on what we've heard, everything seems to be going great for those 11 students.
And it's spread out at multiple colleges?
Yeah, they're at 5 colleges. The only ones, Nashua isn't participating, but there was nobody to enroll at White Mountains. So it's cybersecurity, it's advanced manufacturing, it's healthcare, accounting, and criminal justice, and engineering. And pretty much everybody's doing something different. We have a couple kids in cybersecurity down at Manchester, and a couple in engineering up at NHTI, but other than that, they're just one-offs at different colleges. And Manchester has the majority of students. They have 6 students, and NHTI has 3, I believe. The rest just have 1 or 2.
I think this gives because you've got it 5 colleges. Actually, it's nice that everybody will have all the colleges will be able to have this experience and figure out what works, what doesn't work, rather than trying to say, well, they all went to Manchester, but that wouldn't work at our school. They're all getting the opportunity to try it out. So I think that's, from the college side, that's got to be good that they're all going to be able to figure out their pieces. So good. Thank you.
We're actually very grateful that it's only 11 students because, like I said, it was a little clunky to make sure it all worked. But now we've got a process down, and we're building on that. So we'll be ready for more students next year.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. I have a couple updates. The tax credit program did finish out the year with applicants. Although I know it was really difficult. We were pushing out to the CTE centers in March and April to collect information, and they unfortunately had a lot of other things going on at the time. But we did have a champion at Pinkerton, their work-based learning coordinator, who made it his mission, because he no longer had students out in work-based learning, to then keep in touch with all of his employers and do one-on-one sessions to get them to fill out the paperwork. And so we were able to submit $89,000 worth of tax credit, all to Pinkerton. So what that tells you is, if we've got $500,000 a year, if one school can pull off $89,000 with 6 employers, this year, Senator Waters, we should not have a problem hitting $500,000, because we can start it now. You know, an opportunity for our employers in this remote world is online guest speaking. This is a great opportunity to build some opportunities for the employers. So hopefully, I said this Friday, we will, as we interview our work-based learning coordinators, that, you know, whoever that person is, this will be a big project for them as they start talking to the employers of, this person can present to them, you want to get involved in CTE. Oh, and by the way, here's a great benefit for you that we can give back to you. So, and I know, you know, Peter, you might be able to help us out through the auto dealers of really reaching out to them of, because they were not on the list for Pinkerton, but they're working with every single one of our CTE centers. So that could be an opportunity. Maybe we could do it through the association of, here's the paperwork, and then have it filter up. So that's what we're looking for our new work-based learning coordinator to do, is work much more holistically at the state, like the example of working with Dartmouth Hitchcock and developing a statewide internship program at any Dartmouth Hitchcock facility. So as we find large employers have this work-based learning coordinator work much more holistically at a state level to take the pressure off, because not every school has a work-based learning coordinator or an ELO coordinator. And it ends up being on an assistant principal or a school counselor who have a few other things going on. So we're trying to take some of that at our office and help with some of that paperwork. We are participating, hopefully, knock wood, in a large statewide grant. There was, and I believe it was the Perkins set aside at the federal level, had put out from the Department of Ed state grants that could only be applied for by post-secondary institutions. And so UNH Extension decided to be the lead on this. And it was to develop a network of 4 business incubators around the state, and to grow off of the incubator program that they already have. But they were looking to build this out statewide. And the target, like Perkins, is underrepresented communities. And so I'm on the call. They invited me into this just because it was a Perkins grant, but it's not something that we in our office could apply for. And as I always do in our Zoom call, I'm sitting here with the RV behind us, and Will Arvello is part of this group and said, hey, Eric, could you talk a little bit about the RV? And so I did. It started them brainstorming of, okay, they're going to have 4 incubators around the state, but that still doesn't meet all the needs of how do you get it to the underrepresented communities? Well, you do it by taking it mobile in the RV as a mobile incubator. And their push would be to promote it to CTE related businesses of, working with the CTE centers of, okay, once you graduate, are you looking at going into business for yourself? If you're going to be in the trades, how can this help you as a business incubator? If we get this grant, it's a 3-year grant for the state, and it will fund a full-time person whose main responsibility will be to drive the RV 30 hours a week around the state of New Hampshire. And their main focus will be relating it to the CTE centers. So what programs are going on at the CTE center? We're going to come into that community. We're going to promote CTE. Oh, by the way, we've got this business incubator, and here's some information, and connect it up. But that's going to make our lives so much easier if we actually have a full-time person. So Jeff and Diane do not need to be driving this around the state while they're trying to do other things. We enjoy doing it, but if we can meet somebody there, it's much better than us having to drive it. So we're looking forward to that. And the aviation program is up and running. Although it is still in development. Conway has 2 full first-year classes, which I'm really excited about. So we have a call this afternoon with the FAA just to sort of touch base where things are at. This year is the development year, and we should have at least 3 other schools next year adding into the aviation program. And I just found out that there are 2 FAA grants that the FAA will be releasing in November, ranging between $25,000 and $500,000, targeted at increasing aviation education at the high school level, providing training for teachers who would like to become aviation teachers, as well as for people changing careers, specifically military. So it could be an opportunity for our CTE centers that once they get the programs launched, to also launch a CTE After Dark program for adults who are interested in doing this and partnering with the adult ed program, similar to what Al is doing with the manufacturing side. So we just found out about these, so I'll see if I can get some more information this afternoon, but that could be a great opportunity for our 5 schools that are currently looking at building out the program to get their flight simulator, to get some other equipment that we cannot do under Perkins. It's just too heavy of a lift. So that was very exciting. It just, the timing was perfect for it. And Manchester, the kids came back over the summer to continue building their airplane because they stopped building in March. So I need to talk to Karen, find out where they're at, but I'm assuming that probably by Thanksgiving, the plane will be finished, which will be really exciting. And then, yes, Senator Waters, I think offline, we can probably talk about the offshore wind consortium. And I don't know where that stopped. I don't know if their conversation stopped because of everything or it's still going on, but we do have our Seacoast schools that are very, very interested in participating in that conversation. So that's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else for the better of the cause? All right.
Eric, in the auto tech world, I just want to give a brief update because of COVID. What we did is to reach out to individual manufacturers to see what online training they had available that they typically provide to the dealerships themselves. A lot of them came through and provided for free these same programs to local high schools as well as community colleges. So within Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, Jessica Dade, our workforce coordinator, sent out all that information to the schools, encouraged them to take advantage of those programs. We offer we offer safety training, I should say, each one of the CT programs at the beginning of each year. We're going to switch to an online program for that, but we still want to make sure that that's available. And really from an enrollment end of it, things look very strong at the high schools overall. Community colleges have scaled back a little bit, only really because of the COVID separation issue more than anything. But with that, I definitely appreciate that a lot of the high school CTEs, the directors that are here today, as well as all the other directors out that are trying to get a hands-on training as much as possible. And from an industry end of it, we greatly appreciate that. So that's it for a quick update from the auto world.
Thank you. And you reminded me, construction did something very, very similar from the national side. I Build New Hampshire reached out to all of the schools as well, that their national partners were providing some online materials free of charge to the high schools.
That's great.
Diane, do you want to talk a little bit about ZSpace? Just give everybody an update of what it is and where we're at.
Sure.
Not everybody even knows what it is, so you probably want to tell them.
Okay, ZSpace is a computer that is designed to give three-dimensional access to programs like auto and healthcare and vet tech, and there are so many different programs on the computer. I'm still learning them all. So basically, if you can go into the welding program and actually do a welding and it's 3D, and you can go into the auto program and actually take the engine apart. I have yet to figure out how to take the bolt off. I'm going to be working on that today. And I don't know what else to say, Eric. You caught me off guard.
Sorry. So we did through our office, through some Perkins money, we purchased two. They're virtual reality, augmented reality laptops, and the benefit to them is they do not require the Oculus. It's a laptop that has sensors around the screen, and then you have a pair of glasses that are basically like a regular pair of glasses that have sensors attached to them, and they talk to each other. And so as the student moves their head, the item on the screen moves, and then they have the stylus that they manipulate things with. And then there are follower glasses. So somebody else could put on a pair of these blue glasses and see 3D what's going on, but they won't have any impact on moving it around in their head. And so there they are. So that's the...
These are the goggle glasses that have the dots on them that connect to the computer themselves. And then we also have a pair of blue ones that you can just view the scene, and you control it with a pen, a 3D pen as well.
Yeah. And so we brought them with us when we went to Newport on Thursday last week. It was our first public trial of them. Diane probably spent the most time on them, but Jeff and I and a couple of us have tried it out, and Diane's son's tried it out. So we took it out to the school and could not get the kids off it. Once they're in, it was fantastic. We couldn't get the principal off it, to be honest with you. He sat down, but it hits most of our CTE programs. And from the auto side, they can complete their ASE, some of their ASE certifications on this system. They have tied it to ASE. Built in, it's got the time tests. The teacher can see what the student scores are on it. And so they're working to develop more of those credentials as part of it. But it was, originally we had talked about doing this as we would take this out to the middle schools to show them what it was all about. Then we said, okay, and then COVID happened, and we said, okay, maybe this is an opportunity that a CTE teacher could get them, but send them to the sending high schools. So that way way, if a kid can't get to your CTE center 5 days a week, but is at their high school, they could check out this laptop and they could spend a little time welding or doing the auto program or doing health science there. So we're trying to figure out the best way to do this, but we are making some Perkins funds available for school systems to see this during our summer program, our summer teacher training program. zSpace did do a presentation so the directors and the teachers could see what it was. And if anybody's interested, we're happy to send you the link to their site or set you up at a time where we'll come out with one of the computers and show you what it's all about. They have a ton of other apps besides CTE. They have a lot of STEM apps. They have ESL apps. They have all these different, but they've basically gamified a lot of the education so students could learn. But the health science ones tend to be the most popular. Is you can take a body and as you pull it, the little guy comes out of the screen at you, and then you can start taking the people apart. Same with the vet tech. I was able to take a dinosaur apart. They have a whole piece for that. So they have a physics, I think is probably the most they have is the physics apps. So we're real excited about this piece as we start figuring out a way to use this along with CTE. It will not replace it, but it's going to be a really good piece to add on for not only our middle school kids, but our high school kids who might be missing some time. Your welding class only has 8 stations, but you've got 12 kids. They can be on the laptop doing some welding while they're waiting for a welding station to open up. So again, this was something we had been looking into, but now because of COVID, we're looking at utilizing it in a completely different way. All right.
Eric, that sounds super exciting. It's kind of the most difficult hurdle to overcome is that hands-on. I agree it probably won't replace it altogether, but if ASE is already involved with it, I think that's amazing. And we'd love to get a demonstration of it for NHADA and how we might be able to get more involved with it. So that's a fantastic update.
Great, thank you.
Eric, what's the cost of something like that?
So they come in both laptop and desktop, and we just think the laptops are make more sense because they're more portable. So they're a little more expensive as the laptop, but the ones we got, which have just about every CTE program embedded in it, were $5,000. And then there's an annual subscription renewal based on the apps that you get. But if you were putting it at your CTE center, you wouldn't necessarily need all of the apps. You'd put on the ones that you had. And the most expensive is actually the welding, because it comes with an additional piece of equipment to make a welding gun so you could weld with it. So the apps run between $200 and $500 each year for a renewal. The welding is $1,200. So it was a little bit more expensive. But again, this is something that from the CTE centers, we can help you with on a Perkins grant, on a reserve grant to purchase them. And then it is something you could fold into your annual Perkins application of how you're going to spend some of your funding is renewing these certificates. So the college as well, Beth, if it's something that the CTE teachers of the college would be interested in, it's another opportunity. We're talking with corrections about doing it because they are trying to expand their CTE corrections, both the adult and at Sununu. And this is a great way for them to expand their CTE offerings without, again, building a huge lab. They've got an auto lab, but if they don't always have things to work on, this is a great supplement for somebody. And at Sununu Center, the kids are in and out so quickly, they can't really do a whole class, but this can give them some exposure to a wide variety of CTE programs. So,
yeah, I'd definitely like to take a look at it, more closer look at that.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you all. It is great getting everybody back together again and having our official meeting. And I said I will send out later this week just a schedule of what it's going to look like for the Mondays and make sure that we're all set. And that way we can work with the Senate office to get this into their Zoom schedule to make sure that we can have this hosted properly each time.
Eric, did we have any minutes to approve or
We did not, and I apologize for that.
Because
I think our last,
we have to have an official roll call vote on, but let's make sure we get that all caught up next time.
we will get both the last formal minutes, which I think was probably might have been our February meeting, but it could be on March, and I'll double check. I've got the minutes. So the next meeting will have 2 sets of minutes to approve.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you. If that's not, we will adjourn from here, and I think,
Alan, do we need to vote to adjourn? Yes, so Eric, you need to have a roll.
we do need to vote. Okay. Okay, could I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so move.
Second.
For a second. And we need to go around and do a formal vote. Doherty,
Yes.
I vote yes. Al,
Yes.
Vaso,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Roxy,
Yes.
Senator Waters.
Yes.
So moved. We have adjourned, and I believe, you want to talk a minute? Should we, I can set up a quick Zoom call separately, David, if you and Senator Waters are available. You had a couple.
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right. I'll send both of you a quick invite.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks.
Good meeting. Bye-bye.
Good meeting.